Make sure my phone is muted. We don't need that ringing. That's happened before. Not so good. So your naturalhealthcare.com, is that still a thing? Is that still a company?
Naturalhealthcare.com is a website that I own. It's not active right at the moment. It will be soon. I will offer supplements over there. My main website is drbeverlyyates.com.
Right. Okay, so we're not talking about naturalhealthcare.com at this point?
No, we're talking about Dr. Beverly Yates for the moment.
Okay. All right.
And when people Google, they'll find this stuff. I'm not worried
Yeah,
about
I
it.
found everything, but okay, so you're still in private practice
Yes.
and you're a heart disease diabetes expert with over 27 years experience, MIT trained electrical engineer, naturopathic medical school. Okay. Oh, I have this twice. All right, I can skip this. All right, so I do all of the tech myself.
Okay.
So if there at any point you need to stop or you want to say something differently, you're an expert at this, so I'm not. That's probably not going to be an issue, but I say it to everybody just in case.
That's fine. It's
'Cause
always
I can
good to
always
know.
cut stuff out.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
big deal.
Exactly. You can edit around it, which is really wonderful.
Yeah. I've had people say, "Why don't you just pay somebody else? Like go through Fiverr or something. Go pay somebody else to do your tech for you." But it's time and labor intensive, but I like having the control.
Okay.
I don't really want to give that away. I mean,
Whatever
maybe at
works for
some
you.
point, but this is still a brand new thing. So,
Okay.
we'll see.
All right.
Okay. Let's shut this off. Okay.
Yeah, let me do this for my gizmos. Because that's, if you don't, this is when 3,000 things pop on.
Right.
You're like, not now. Okay.
Make sure all the cats were out of the room before, because they'll be quiet until they're not, and then we'll hear meow. It'll be fun. All right. I don't have I need to create like a Jen Gottlieb kind of pre-show routine, and I don't have one.
I think that's fine. It's entirely up to you, but yeah. You just be yourself, whatever it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Permission to Heal. I am Marci Brockman, and I am thrilled that you're here. Today on our show, we have Dr. Beverly Yates from California. Dr. Beverly is a board-certified naturopathic doctor in private practice. She's a heart disease and diabetes expert with over 27 years experience. She's an internationally acclaimed diabetes expert who uses the Yates Protocol to help people get control over their blood sugar, reclaim their energy, and enjoy life again. The Yates Protocol was developed over the course of her 20-plus years in clinical practice using her systems approach from her prior career as an MIT-trained electrical engineer. This I have to hear more about. Dr. Yates wants to help a growing number of patients get control of their blood sugar and their lives naturally. Welcome, Dr. Beverly.
Hi, Marci. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today with you and your listeners. I think this is going to be just a wonderful interview time. Looking forward to connecting.
Excellent. Yeah, we connected through BSA in the fall.
We did. It was
and
great.
Had a wonderful time with that great class through Super Connector Media and
Yes.
Jen and Chris. Just amazing people. And they've connected so many of us through their course that I have like dozens of new colleagues and friends now. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, it's lovely. It's what should happen, right? It just was so well done.
Absolutely. And their energy was just infectious. Relentlessly infectious. Okay, now I generally start my interviews or podcast conversations, as I prefer to call them, with my 6 quick questions.
Okay,
so what 6 words would you use to describe yourself?
let's see. 6 words to describe myself would include passionate, humorous, playful, clear, empathetic, and strategic. I know how to hone in on what's important.
That's awesome. Yeah, I lose myself with that sometimes. Working for clarity. What is your favorite way to spend a day?
Favorite way to spend a day? Ooh, um, I'm an outdoors person where I can be, probably because I work indoors, right? So
Right.
I'd say biking, walking, hiking, things like that, just enjoying nature. Read a delicious, well-written book. I enjoy words that are particularly well crafted. I'm not necessarily, I don't consider myself a good writer, but I really admire it. I'd say holding hands with my husband,
Oh,
and enjoying the company of family and friends. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of that soon.
yeah. Yeah. I keep telling my
Fingers
friends
crossed.
to
Fingers crossed.
get prepared for a big awkward hug, you know.
Whew. I'll tell you, this has been a minute. Okay.
It's been. How long have you been married?
34 years now.
Wow. That's freaking awesome. That's amazing. That's very cool. Where did you and your husband meet? Were you high
We
school
met at
sweethearts?
college at MIT, actually, in the co-ed dorms.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, my husband and I also met in college, um, but we never dated until like 5 years ago.
Yeah. We didn't date until 2 or 3 years after graduation. It was not an immediate thing.
It happens, you know.
All right.
That's good. It's all good. What is your favorite childhood memory?
A favorite childhood memory is learning to ride a bike. I remember my mom holding the back of my seat on the bike. I was wobbly, of course, like all kids are. We're wobbling going down the street. And then I finally got that balance point where you put the pedals in front and you don't fall over. And
Right.
I was so excited. I would turn around looking back to see her. I still remember the this look of joy on her face. You know, she was really rooting for me. And that's a great memory.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have very, as you're talking, I have very sort of snapshot memories of my dad and I doing that with
Yeah.
me when I was little. I hadn't thought about that in a very long time. The bicycle thing is just like so ubiquitous, you know, like we all have that sort of
Something.
memory of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. What is your favorite meal?
Favorite meal. I really enjoy salads that are crunchy, with like maybe a little bit of sprouts or pumpkin seeds, things like that with mint and lime to give it those extra flavors, that little burst.
Nice.
It's a nice mix and it's really just something I enjoy, especially in the warmer months.
Do you put proteins in your salad, like chicken
Usually,
or fish or
yeah.
something?
Yeah. It could be chicken or tuna fish, it could be salmon, whatever, makes sense. But definitely that base for me is just right. And then papaya too, if it's in season. I really enjoy that. Or if we happen to be on vacation somewhere that has papaya, I appreciate that. It's just a special thing.
Huh. I don't think I've ever had papaya that wasn't dried papaya.
Really? Okay. Well, here now in California, a lot of times in the markets, you can get things like all kinds of fruits from around the world and other climates, including the tropical climates, pretty readily. But that isn't true everywhere. So it's definitely
Yeah.
seasonal. It's not
Like
all
we have a
year.
lot of mangoes and things like that, but
Yeah.
I don't think that I've seen papaya in our grocery stores here.
There you go.
Maybe
You
I'm
can
just
be
not
on the
looking.
hunt.
Maybe I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know. Interesting. Interesting. What one piece of advice would you like to give your younger self?
Yeah, I think that one of the key things that pops up for me with that is around when people show you who they are, believe them. So if
Yeah.
someone shows themselves to be kind or trustworthy, reliable, smart, etc., you can go with that. And if they show themselves to be not trustworthy, to lack integrity, to be foolish, or to be mean, or someone who's always spiteful and just trying to drag everybody down, believe them.
Yeah, even if their words say otherwise, that their actions
Exactly.
really tell you who they are.
Actions are far more important than words.
That's a big one. Something I didn't learn until much, later in my adult life. I don't think as an adolescent or even as a 20 something, I sort of
Yeah.
understood that. I took
Yeah.
people at what they said, at their
Yeah.
word, and
Yeah.
got
That seems
myself
reasonable, right? But
right.
won't do that again. I'm
No,
done with that part.
you get smacked down a few dozen times doing it that way. Eventually you learn, eventually. Okay, number 6. What is the one thing you most would like to change about the world?
Ooh, it's quite a list. Only one?
I don't know. Feel free to ad lib. If you've got a few,
No,
let's hear them.
we go for one. I think right now I would love to be able to change people's tendency to blame folks for their
Oh,
struggles with health. So for people who like to blame others who have health problems or illnesses, I'd love to see that one go away, especially here in the US. I think it's absolutely become a national sport. I think it has no place in human interactions, right? Because, bottom line, Marci, it's not helpful. I think it is disrespectful. What's far more useful and respectful is to help people address any issues they have about their health that get in the way of them being healthy, making healthy choices, and truly healing. We need to help people work on making their lives better. I think that that's far, far more useful. Yeah, that's something I would change for sure.
So do people blame their genes or their DNA or their parentage? Is that what you mean?
Oh, there's a whole host of possibilities for who to blame, right? Like, whatever's on the wheel of misfortune that day. Um, and sometimes it's just not useful. Like, for instance, since I work with so many people who have chronic illnesses like heart disease, and especially with diabetes, people often blame folks who have, let's say, type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, specifically, not type 1, but for type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes. They will blame them for their illness under the presumption that they somehow deserve it and that they've partied their way to problems with blood sugar. And often, if you are respectful and listen to people's story to find out how the situation arose, you will discover many times they did not party their way there. They may have had chronic unresolved stress they didn't get a chance to recover from. They may have had really poor sleep. That'll hijack your blood sugar. They may have had a lack of opportunity to exercise, and or they might suffer from quite a bit of injury. And so it's not easy for them to exercise. They're in so much pain. Maybe their doctors don't cooperate. They can't get like knee replacements. I've been shocked how many people are denied healthcare that need it when they're in chronic pain, and it could be solved. I'm shocked sometimes at the stories that I hear. And then nutrition. Look, Marci, let's be real. Here in the US, not everyone has access to quality, healthy food at a price they can afford. Right. That's just real. And sometimes kids who are in schools, the way they're funded, sometimes they might have much more access to the food that's available in school, where it's lots of sugary, lots of processed stuff. There's soda cans available at the vending machine. And the more we get that framework resolved to something healthier, the better off people will be. But a lot of people will blame folks who wind up, let's say, with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, not knowing there's this whole series of things that preceded that chronic rise in blood sugar. Right. And the good news is that it can correct pretty quickly if you know what to do. But I think blaming people is just not appropriate. It's not.
Well, any sort of life difficulty or challenge, blaming somebody else or any outside source rather than internalizing your culpability in that behavior isn't helpful.
Right. And once you know better, you can do better. But first you have to know about it and then have access to the tools that can help you make things better. So for instance, sometimes the transition is if someone's in a lot of pain, but maybe they can get to a swimming pool. If they can get to a pool, they can safely exercise. Even if they have to put on floaters and stuff. So if they don't know how to swim, they can still be in the pool safely and get moving. Right. And that'll start to make a difference. And, it's just so many simple steps that can happen, but people have to know what it is that they personally will have to do to close those gaps. And that's the good news. The gaps can be closed. At least it's not impossible.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get messed up with the motivation part. Like, I have met with nutritionists and dietitians and doctors, and I know exactly kind of what I should be doing. And I was on a really good, I had a lot of momentum last winter, and then the pandemic happened. And that threw my momentum in the garbage disposal, and that was that.
Yeah, we all got in the blender together, didn't we?
Oh,
what a
God,
mess.
Yeah. And then all of the emotional eating habits came back, and everyone's sedentary because we're sort of stuck inside because it's cold, or at least in New York it's cold. And it's sort of never, for me, it hasn't gone back to that nice momentum I had while seeing with the dietitian. So, yeah, I'm not in any way, shape, or form headed towards the diabetic thing, thank goodness, knock on wood. But yeah, I have weight to lose. I have health to regain.
Right.
You
will have confidence that you will get back on track. We all got displaced and disrupted. There's just no glossing that over. And it will take probably a few weeks to a month to really get that dialed in again. You will get there. We will all get there as a community and together as a nation. But I do think we need to give each other some grace while we make those transitions. That was a big deal.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. I had been complaining to my therapist bi-weekly throughout this entire thing about my bad emotional eating habits. And she just kept saying, stop judging yourself. We're in the middle of an unprecedented global pandemic, and now is not the time to try new things. Just be chill and calm down and be nice to yourself. And when this is all over, you can address it.
That's right. That's real. Times, the what, 300 plus million of us. Exactly.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So it's starting to turn to spring a little bit. And I got my vaccine last week. I'm feeling a little better.
Congratulations. Good. You're on your way.
On my way. It was a last minute thing with the vaccine. I had because I'm a 1B participant, I suppose, because I'm a teacher. And I wasn't able to get an appointment until the end of March. And then suddenly my school district opened up 400 vaccines last Wednesday through Walgreens.
Okay.
And so I went on the website, signed up, got my appointment, waited online with my little camp chair because the lines move very slowly. And Johnson & Johnson's right in my arm. And a former student of mine who is a pharmacist gave me my vaccine.
How lovely. That's great. Good. All right.
It was fun. Cool. I liked it.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
All right. So let's get to your stuff here. You have a book that you wrote.
Yeah. One of the things I've done.
That's amazing. Heart Health for Black Women, a natural approach to healing and preventing heart disease. Signed copies are available on your website, which is drbeverlyyates.com. That will be linked to the show notes underneath on the website, on the show notes of the podcast. And signed copies are available. Signed copies are available there and also on Amazon. What would you tell us about your book?
My book was written with the idea of helping people who currently have heart disease to make their situation better. And anyone who has a family history looking to avoid it, the book was also written with that person in mind. So a two-pronged effort. One, to help people who are in immediate jeopardy to be healthier and to be able to deal with the issues that affect heart disease. And then for those who are like, oh no, is this in my future? I would really like to avoid it.
Right.
Great.
Right.
You're covered too.
It's a premeditated kind of
I
prophylactic
think some of us, we watch our parents and aunts and uncles, grandparents, and we're like, could I have a different outcome? Is there something I can be doing right now that will make my tomorrows better?
Preventative.
And if you're in the mess, and maybe it's a total surprise, like there's been a fair number of particularly women in my practice that I've seen who've had heart attacks that seemingly came out of the blue, no family history. And in that case, sometimes it's really discombobulating because they're like, but wait, I was doing all of these other wonderful, what they feel was healthy things. And then this happens, and so I can have that conversation with people. Part of what the book talks about is the role of things like cholesterol. Oh, Marci, it's gotten such a bad name. Cholesterol is considered this evil thing. Cholesterol is good for you, and it's a normal part of what your body needs. It's all of your sex hormones, your testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. They're all made from a building block, a substrate of cholesterol.
Really?
You want cholesterol. The question is your body in a state of inflammation? If there's inflammation that's present, it makes cholesterol sticky. That's what leads you to have the heart attacks, strokes, and all the other things that can go wrong with this. It's also inflammation is the culprit behind these really negative responses people have sometimes to something like COVID-19. And then the next thing you know, this person's very sick because their body was already at a high threshold for inflammation. And then here comes this virus, and now they're pushed to a place where they're going to become very sick. Whereas other people, they're not very inflamed. Here comes COVID-19 and not a whole lot happens. That's where you see these big variability in response.
That pieced together a whole lot of stuff that I didn't know. Wow.
So the diseases that are driven, that cause inflammation or that have inflammation as a strong imprint, if you will. Right. Heart disease is certainly one. Diabetes, absolutely. Asthma, anything that ends in itis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, inflammatory diseases in general, immune health system problems, they're all leave people much more vulnerable to the effects of COVID-19 viral attack.
They're all
than for other people.
inflammatory-based things.
They're inflammation-based. And things where there's not a lot of inflammation, probably the person might be less likely as a raw number, like as a data point, they're less likely to be so vulnerable to really nasty effects and or death from COVID-19. And that's why, so people's health has been prioritized that way around. We really need to get certain populations immunized, pre-existing conditions like obesity. When someone's really obese, the extra fat on the body, unfortunately, produces the chemicals of inflammation, those cytokines. and it causes that big inflammation response. So they're already, again, at that high level of threshold. And then here comes COVID-19, and the two together just takes it all out of the park. And next thing you know, they're so much sicker. That's not to say that people who are lean can't have a bad outcome. Unfortunately, sadly, yeah. Right. However, people who have those things that we just talked about are far more likely, and that's why it's inflammation. So I would love it if our public health messaging going forward can talk to people about, hey, by the way, not only do we have this viral attack, but here's what we need you to do. Let's see if we can get in 5 to 9 servings a day of fresh fruits and vegetables, or minimally processed, you know. Let's see if we can get in today a 30-minute walk. Like, continue to remind people and just give gentle reminders and nudges, the same way we're telling people to wear face masks, hand wash, do the physical social distancing, which is excellent messaging. Let's tack on some things that will help us stay out of trouble for the future. This is a great time because people's health is on their mind. Like, let's just share that, you know?
Wow, you just really pieced together so many different pieces for me. I was seeing a dietitian last winter who we did, I can't think of the name of it, but a series of blood tests where they ran like 150 different blood tests of different foods to see how my body reacts to
food intolerance testing or food sensitivity.
Yeah. That's it. It was like LEAP. Yeah. And we figured out that a lot of the foods that I was eating that were typical, like diet, watch your weight, healthy foods, for me caused an inflammatory response. And they were exactly opposite of what I was supposed to be doing. And so, like you were saying, your favorite meal is salad. And I also love the crunch of a salad, but my body does not like salad.
Okay. That's so
There's
important.
Something
to know,
about
right?
lettuces that my body doesn't like. So I've eliminated that. And immediately a ton of gastronomic issues disappeared. Gastrointestinal issues disappeared. You know, I cut out dairy, or 99% of dairy, and suddenly things were so much better.
Right.
You know? So
what a gift. I'm so glad you did that. One of my favorite sayings is test, don't guess.
Yeah.
Because
so now I've got a list of foods.
Might not be healthy for you.
Exactly.
It might not be.
Absolutely. So I switched. I'm now doing oat milk for everything, and I'm not, it's just, it was a total eye opener. Totally revolutionized the way I have to grocery shop. I have this color coded list of foods that I can eat and things that I can't. Things with red lines, you know, like soy. It's like almost allergic for me.
Okay. So let's make an important distinction, because everybody listening might have some confusion about this. A food allergy is something where it's an immediate reaction within 0
I'm not really talking
minutes,
allergy. I'm talking
airways closing, epinephrine 10, you know, big response. Your lips might get super large. That's called angioedema. And, you know, that's a medical emergency, right? 911 time, or go to the emergency room, or you use an EpiPen. A food intolerance or a food sensitivity is one where your body has a delayed reaction. Right. It is not life-threatening. It does make you miserable. It can cause all kinds of skin reactions, itchy skin, foggy brain, pain throughout the body, joint pain. It can certainly lead to gastrointestinal, so GI and gut problems, stomach problems, diarrhea, constipation. It can lead to any host of things, muscle aches, just, it's a long list. Bottom line, not life-threatening, does cause misery.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. Yeah, I get those questions a lot. It's like, let me just make sure people are not confused.
It's good. You know, we hear so much information from so many varied sources.
It's true. And some of it's not clear. Some of it is so vague. You're like, what are they talking about? What?
Especially the stream of infomercials that seem to pervade my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
You know, like, just take this pill, just drink this shake, just do this exercise at this specific time. What? None of that makes sense to me whatsoever. Oy. Okay. So I was reading on Amazon the reviews of your book, because I actually haven't seen it myself. Okay. And I thought this was something that was very intriguing to me. There is a physician, Dr. Ayaba, who's a rural hospital in Benin, West Africa. She said you donated medical supplies and equipment to rural hospitals. That is amazing. How did that happen?
This was one of those amazing connections. Another friend of mine at the time when I was in Seattle, I had moved from Portland to Seattle and had started a .com, and I was looking to raise venture capital money. And at the times when the first book had come out, The Heart Health for Black Women, Healing and Preventing Heart Disease book. And I met Dr. Ayaba, and it was really wonderful, the connection. And they were going to go back to Benin. And he was saying that, I have a clinic, I have 4 clinics, and I just need more equipment. I'm here in the US trying to raise funds and or get more equipment. And so my equipment at the time, because I knew with starting up a venture capital, hopefully a venture capital based business, et cetera, I was not going to have time for clinical practice. It was just going to collect dust in the garage. So I was like, hey, can I donate you? And I gave him a whole list. I had gyne tables and supplies. I had ear speculums, vaginal speculums, otoscopes, blood pressure cuffs, physical exam tables, all sorts of things, right? And he was just thrilled. So I was like, here. So they've all found a good home. And then he had enough money for shipping, and a container was able to send things back across to Benin. So it worked out. I was really happy. You never know. Sometimes you are in the right place at the right time to help someone else solve a problem. And so I just felt really great about that. So thank you for calling attention to it.
Yeah, I just thought that was so cool.
You're the first person to ask me about that.
Really? Well, you just your research, that's all. I like learning stuff like that. It's very cool. I think so many of us want to do broad community-based philanthropic things. Like our hearts are in the right place, but we just don't know how to do it or how to get involved. And there's some charities that seem a little dubious and some that are absolutely doing the right thing in the right time and the right way. But I'm interested in these little moments of serendipity,
Yeah. It totally worked out. That's right place at the right time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did you always want to be a doctor?
No.
What was your career path? I'm so totally fascinated by people's career paths. You went to MIT to be an electrical engineer first.
I did. So as a little kid, I did not want to be a doctor of any kind at the time, because what I saw of doctors where I grew up was that they were very unhappy, in my opinion. They seemed miserable and suffering. I remember one of our family practice docs that my mom saw, a wonderful man. He was also a chain smoker there in the clinic. Right. And he literally, I think, just worked himself to death. He dropped dead at about age 47 of a heart attack.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, this is not something I want to be. I remember some other doctor's offices I was in as a child, going with family members to the doctor. And whether it was for my own visits as a pediatrician or with the doctors for the adults, I was just like, these didn't seem to be people that I wanted to model. And I knew at that time that people thought the world of people who were doctors, but I did not see that being for me. I loved science and I loved math and technology. I was always that person. I had a ham radio license as a kid.
Wow.
And, I just really, really like science, and I still do. So that
makes sense.
Different thing, right? Science and medicine. They're still trying to make friends with each other. For the most part, it's a good union, but there are definitely some times where politics gets in the way. But I'm always on the side of what is going to best serve people and patients, and rooting for that. And, we have to be realistic about the political implications of things, because sometimes we can't get anything done without paying attention to it. But bottom line is, I'm more interested in results, and that's where the engineer in me comes through. It matters to me. Is someone better by whatever treatment or therapy or advice is given? Did it leave them neutral, or are they worse? To me, those are pretty quantifiable, and we can go with that.
Very cool. Yeah, I see this is just a huge disparity in people's access to healthcare in this country.
Oh gosh, it's stunning.
And it's such a complex, absolutely multi-layered problem with so many stakeholders, some whom obviously don't have a particularly humanistic point of view.
That's not what's driving it. Yeah.
So it's just so scary to me. Just like what you said before, there are people who can't get knee replacements who need them, or organ donations who need them, or whatever.
Yeah, I've been surprised, Marci, the number of patients that I've had over the years who've told me that their doctor has denied their request for knee replacements. These are people who have no cartilage. So the articular cartilage between the knee joints that makes it a smooth motion, there's a layer here about like that. And if it's gone, then it's bone on bone, right? You can imagine. Doesn't it sound like that hurts? Yeah, it hurts. Yeah. And so they'll deny people knee replacement. And I'm like, well, why? And then they'll tell the patient will inevitably tell me some variation of this story, which is that the doctor says they can only have a knee replacement once they have lost enough weight to, and I'm like, okay, hold on. You are in pain. You're unable to exercise because of the pain. Your weight has gone up because you are sedentary now at a level that you never were before. And you can't get the thing that will help you feel hopefully a lot better or no pain and get you much more mobile and much more able to exercise until you somehow magically lose weight. Like, it just sounds like,
the
wow,
irony is just scary.
In what universe does this make sense, you know? And I've talked to anesthesiologists because I thought for a while, well, maybe it's anesthesia and dosing for people who weigh more, who are overweight or obese. But look, let's get real. 2/3 of the country right now is overweight or obese. The anesthesiology community is able to handle this safely in surgery. So I don't really know, other than regional bad habits or standards of care, where care is denied to people. I think it's outrageous. It's not all the time. It's not everywhere. But when this happens, so if anybody's listening to this, please push back. Absolutely. You know, I have a dear friend of mine, she's not a patient, but a friend who told me she finally threatened the doctor with going to another practice in another state in order to get the surgery because she was so tired of being held hostage around this. And so then when they realized what dollars were going to walk out the door, they decided to say yes. And she was able to get her knees replaced and is far more mobile now. But it should have happened like 15 years before. Wow. You know, I just don't understand how that's, to me, it's disease management. It's not healthcare. Those are different things.
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
In an unrelated, slightly adjacent little personal story, after my son was born 23 years ago, I had 2 C-sections, but I had this fluke crazy infection in my incision, and they took all the staples out, and it had to like heal from the inside out on its own, which required being debrided twice a day for almost 6 months.
That's miserable. I've helped some patients.
Painful, awful. And so the doctor, I needed 2 visits a day from a home healthcare nurse to come in and do this. And I'd have to take pain meds before she came in because there is nothing like that pain, at least in my experience.
Searing.
And then eventually, I guess about 2 months into the process, the insurance company said they didn't want to pay for it anymore because it was unnecessary. And they wouldn't pay for the nurse to come to my house.
That's incredible.
But they would pay for me to go to the doctor's office, which was more money.
That's the perverse system we're in. It makes no sense. Sometimes it's even no financial sense. You're just like,
it costs more money for me to go to the doctor's office and have their staff do it than just to have the per diem nurse come to my house.
Right.
You know, so my doctor got on the phone with the insurance company, and it was just some administrator with a business degree or I don't know what, a degree in Crayola crayons, I don't know. Certainly no medical background whatsoever. And he screamed at her like I was shocked because he was just losing it. And then a couple of months went by, and they were like, well, you know, we notice on your records that your husband is a scientist. Let him do it instead of paying. I'm like, first of all, he faints at the sight of blood. And second of all, he's a geologist.
He's a scientist. He's not a medical professional.
He's not a medical professional. No. So again, we had to complain. And
that's a new one. I've not heard that before.
And then they were like, well, can't you do it yourself? I'm like, it isn't a wound.
You can do your own self-surgery, really?
First of all, I don't think it's physically possible to cause yourself that level of pain. And in order for me to see the wound, I have to fold my body in half to close the wound. It's not like it's on my leg.
It's absolutely not possible.
Oh, it was so ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
That's a new twist, though. Your spouse should be.
Right.
I didn't laugh, but I mean, it's like theater of the absurd. You cannot make this crap up. It really does happen. Yeah. It's one by one. And after a while, don't you feel kind of almost gaslighted? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Did that really happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it did.
Totally nuts.
Yeah, we could do better. We got a lot of.
We have to. And I think we slowly are, you know.
We are.
I think that this whole pandemic in some respects has cleared the path for a little bit more patient-centered care.
Yes, and more people are pushing and able to get others to help them advocate, understanding that it's not reasonable for one person to push that rock, but if tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, of millions of people push the rock's going to move.
Right.
It has
to. Absolutely. Yeah. And this telehealth thing, I think, has been a miracle for my life. you
Oh,
know?
it's been a huge help. I offered it for my patients in 2009. Some of them didn't like it back in the day because one, they wanted to be in person. They much preferred that, particularly my older patients. And two, I think they didn't understand maybe the value or the power of having that option. But I kept it the whole way, not, of course, knowing that the pandemic was going to unfold. But the second that happened, and then we had our shelter in place orders here, people were thrilled because they felt protected, especially my
Right.
patients who have diabetes and heart disease. Because if anybody shouldn't be out in the ocean of COVID-19, it
Of
is them.
course.
It is them.
Absolutely.
I've been
Absolutely.
hopeful to have live events for people with diabetes in 2020. So, Marci, what's the one business you shouldn't have in 2020? Live events for people with diabetes.
Live events, period, unless
So I
they're
just had to
digital.
rip that
Right.
idea up. So instead, I can go to online program. But sometimes you just have to flex with the situation. And for healthcare in the U.S., there's just a lot of room for improvement. There's some things we do well, and we have to make it so that people who have chronic illnesses are embraced
Right.
and helped and supported, particularly around the lifestyle things, because it will bring the cost of care down, the
Absolutely.
quality of life up, life satisfaction up, rather than all of this misery that you see unfold that is just so unnecessary. I'm sorry you had the craziness with the advice that you should be able to debride your own wound. That's crazy.
Totally crazy.
Oh,
But
well,
I was very pleasantly surprised with my current back injury to find out that acupuncture is covered under my insurance.
that's wonderful. Acupuncture is a wonderful option. Acupuncture,
Absolutely.
chiropractic, physical therapy, it makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Because why go to back surgery immediately? Because I certainly don't need
Most
that.
You may not, an orthopedic surgeon doesn't want to see you if they know they can't help you.
Right. Right. I was
That's not
just
what they're
very
interested
pleasantly surprised.
in. Good. Some good news.
Absolutely. Okay. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about here.
Okay.
You said somewhere, I don't know, it was on your website or it was in a blurb about your book, that African American women have been the only demographic group to see an increase in heart disease in the last decade. Why is that?
Yeah. So when I wrote this book in 2000, what we'd seen in the 1990s was at that time, other demographics within the US were holding pretty steady for the incidence of heart disease. And African American women's incidence had really taken off. And I think some of the trends that were in place at that time were that number one, for African American women, like all women, heart disease was less likely to be detected. Women are often not as well diagnosed around this, although it's gotten better. Now that we're 2 decades later in the 2020s, I'm hopeful this will continue, where it's much more on physicians of all kinds' radars to screen women and to keep in their differential diagnosis the thought that she might have heart disease of some kind and not dismiss it, not assume it is an anxiety attack or an anxiety driven thing, which is 100% valid and should be assessed as such.
Right.
Mental illness and how we feel is important and can show up as seemingly heart kinds of symptoms, cardiovascular symptoms.
Happened to me in
So that was
July. I
one.
thought I was having a heart attack and it wound up being an anxiety
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But I went to the hospital and they treated me as if I was a potential cardiac patient, did all
that
of the
is the thing.
tests.
Because it's
Everything
life
came out
threatening. You got
fine.
to start out with the worst and then you move on to the things that may not be so life threatening, right?
Right?
Another reason why we had a much worse in the way of outcomes was by the time anybody figured out it was heart disease, it was much more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Like any illness, if things are more advanced, if it's more embedded, then that person is more likely to be made sicker and there might be at risk of serious consequences, including death. Had it been caught sooner, damage wouldn't be as bad and things would be in a better place, right? It just kind of makes sense. So those two phenomena really, really were making a difference. And then now we've also found, which I could have told you as a Black woman, is that a lot of times if you're in a medical setting, sometimes when you're reporting pain, discomfort, things like that, it's not taken as seriously or it's just ignored. Sadly, that's still a phenomenon in
Even
terms
by
of
female
healthcare
doctors
disparities.
to female patients, I've found.
I have seen it. I have seen it. I was with a relative, a female relative, and we were in the emergency room together. And this person was another female doctor, a gynecologist, who had no clue, for instance, about some things that that the other family member was experiencing. Even though she's a woman, she hadn't experienced any of this, so she didn't really know. And so you can't assume, even if somebody is in your demographic, you just never know, right? They may not be able to relate for whatever reason and not take it seriously. So I'm hopeful that some things around that will be much more specific and that people will remember why they got into healthcare or medicine in the first place. some of their training, quite honestly, is very brutal and
Mm-hmm.
dehumanizing, and I don't think that helps. So
No.
that's my sense of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my youngest sister is a physician, and when she was going through med school and internships and residency, and I mean, we didn't see her at all unless she had like note cards in her hands and she was studying
Yeah,
constantly, and
yeah,
she was working insane hours and didn't have
insane
time to
hours.
feed herself or clean the house or anything, even just
18-hour
me.
shifts is not good.
No, and I think that like the care that's being given to the patients decreases because
Yes, it
the
does.
doctors are impatient and exhausted and
Yeah,
human.
they're human. They're absolutely human. And, it doesn't lead to good outcome for anybody. And I think it leaves doctors more vulnerable to have all sorts of stress related problems with their own health, a tendency towards addictions, et cetera. It only makes sense, right? They're trying to compensate for a system that is not designed for health. Again, it's about disease management, not caring for health.
Yeah. And there's too many things that we could talk for years about that. There's too many nuances of that. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
So what does it take to have a healthy heart?
So, what it takes to have a healthy heart is being able to focus on the things that are going to matter, right? There's your four lifestyle pillars that are going to be big players for heart health. One is nutrition. You want to have a high fiber diet full of as many fresh foods as you can reasonably do. 5 to 9 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day. If you are a plant based eater, great. Make sure you don't go crazy on a lot of grains or processed grains slash flours. Sometimes people become carbotarians and carboholics instead of vegetarians and vegans. Okay.
Ah,
And
yes.
when you have protein, have healthy kinds of protein. Have the seafood and fish, as long as you aren't allergic to that. Obviously, if you would like to have chicken or turkey, that's fine. You can have all sorts of things. Nuts and seeds are great. They also have fiber and they have healthy oils in addition to protein. Those are excellent sources. Good combo package.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to eat healthfully that make sense. So that's one. Another piece is exercise, and exercise for heart health really needs to be about consistency and giving the heart what I like to call dynamic range. Like if you love music, if you love performances and the arts, right? Isn't it great when something's really vibrant? And like in a play, in a theater setup, you'll have a quiet moment in a play. You'll have a lot of noise in a play, and they'll take you on this ride as they tell their
Sure.
story. And it makes it very emotionally appealing. Well, very similar for the heart. You want to make sure the heart has a chance to exercise that range too. So you probably want to mix it up and not do the same exercise all the time. So you might want to have some exercise be more aerobic, some be a little more strenuous, maybe even anaerobic, where you're really out of breath. You want to add in resistance training, keep your balance, keep your muscles primed, use it or lose it kind of a thing, and give yourself
Right.
enough time to rest, right? So now we talk about sleep. Sleep is the foundation upon which all health is built. This is where we rest and restore and replenish. This is where your soul, your mind, your spirit, your emotions get reset. You got to hit the reset button every day. If you don't hit reset, it's not good. And if you have chronic sleep problems, you have to address them because they will break something for you, whether it breaks your blood pressure, it might drive up your cholesterol, it might cause you to have a lot of brain fog, it could cause you to act out emotionally and have very difficult, unrewarding relationships. You could lose your job. All sorts of things can happen from that. Then finally, stress. I think of stress as the bully that grabs you by your collar and slams you up against your genetic wall. And whatever your weak links are is what will be expressed if you have chronic stress from which you haven't healed. And if that's an issue at all, whether it's adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, if it is chronic stress from either the prior economic collapse in 2008 and 9, or this moment's epidemics, economic collapse, or whatever else might be stressful, perhaps the loss of one or more loved ones during this pandemic. And if so, I'm so sorry for your loss. There's a lot of things that can happen for people that are unexpected. Car accidents, just any number of things can occur. People wounded in wars. So with that in mind, prioritize where you can healing from it and recovering and create that space and let people know what you're doing. Even if they aren't supportive, it's okay. You make it the priority. They're doing whatever they're doing. Sometimes you literally have to just have those emotional spaces for yourself so that you can do what you need to do.
To carve out that physical and mental time for yourself.
Your heart will thank you.
As well as really everything else. Yeah. That's
the heart to me is a metaphor, right? Like there's obviously the physical heart in our chest, but Marci, the heart is talked about by many traditions, many cultures, people's spiritual beliefs,
Right.
the literature, the poems, the music, the everything, the artwork of all around the world. People think of the heart in more than just the physical beating thing in our chest.
Right.
We think about our
It's like
emotional
the
heart and
central part of
heartbreak.
our being.
Yeah, we think about heartbreak, we think about heartache, all kinds of things. Something was heartfelt and sincere. It
Right.
shows up all over the world. It's interesting that as a human group, as a tribe of humans around the world, we have really all converged on that idea of the heart being one organ that plays a lot of different roles.
It's true. It's true. It's in every piece of literature, every poem. It's in everything that I write personally.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting. Okay. Moving on. Moving on. Okay. So in the bio, you have developed the Yates Protocol,
Yes.
which you named after yourself. Could you explain what that is?
So the Yates Protocol is something that I've developed where I've distilled down the best practices of what I've used to help people after 27 plus years of clinical practice to achieve blood sugar control. And in this, we focus in on those 4 lifestyle pillars, right? That's nutrition, exercise, stress relief and stress management, and sleep. Oh, sweet sleep. To really get a handle on blood sugar issues and help people achieve and maintain blood sugar control. So someone with type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes can start to heal and reverse that damage and improve and get their blood sugar levels back to a healthy range and keep them there, measuring tangibly data-based outcomes, right? The engineer in me is always going to show up. Looking at those numbers, that A1C, which is the average blood sugar control over a period of time, along with their fasting blood sugar numbers as well. And then how they live their life. For some people, this is pretty easy. They just need information. And they're like, oh, like literally, I'm surprised how often this happens. You're going to smile when I tell you, regardless of level of education, I'm surprised at the number of people I've worked with over the years who will tell me they didn't know that drinking soda all day long, like it was water or herbal tea, would wreck their blood sugar.
Really?
They had not a clue. Real, like regular soda, not diet soda, regular soda, right? And I'm like, how did you not know that? But they didn't know that. They really didn't.
A can of soda's got like a cup of sugar in it or something.
Oh my God. We just take the bag and dump it. But people, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So those folks are easy to help because obviously the problem is what they're eating and drinking. And we can help them.
Fix that.
We can help change their palate. Did you know that the cells on the tongue turn over every 10 to about 20, 21 days? You get a whole new set of, which means your taste bud receptors are changing frequently. So you can reset. So if you are a person who has a sweet tooth, a craving,
hi, hello,
we can help you. Yeah, it's quick. And once you get
I have a newfound sugar addiction because
it's so much easier to deal with when you know that and then can take those steps and aha, if I can change what my taste buds prefer, this is half the battle, right? And on and on. So yeah, so the Yates Protocol is designed to help people with those specific issues using those 4 pillars, identifying what's stressful. Not everyone has the same responses to things. We don't all, like some days somebody could insult you and you probably don't care. You're like, ha, jerk, keep right on going, right? Other days you're like, oh, wow. And it really gets under you.
It depends on who the person is when they.
Yeah. Sometimes we're more vulnerable, we're less vulnerable. Some people it's sleep. Some people have things like sleep apnea, other problems. They're insomniacs, or they go to sleep and then they can't sleep through the night and they're up 3-4 times a night and they have busy mind. And again, you tease it apart, figure out what is the issue, and people can work on the things that matter for them. And then for exercise, some people genuinely hate exercise. And one of the things that motivated me to put this together as the Yates Protocol and make this into a program was that I was finding I was having success with people who truly can't exercise because of pain. They haven't gotten the knee replacement or a hip replacement, and they still need to get that blood sugar under control and have some improvement on their weight. So the program does not depend on their ability to exercise, because here's the truth of it, and people will know this is real. There's all kinds of articles. I saw one maybe 2 weeks ago in the New York Times. I've seen this information in other places. I think there's even a show now on PBS talking about this very issue. You cannot out-exercise this problem. So if you just exercise and you don't eat well, your stress levels are through the roof, and you have poor sleep, your blood sugar will probably be too high. Exercise alone will not save you. Now, is exercise important? Yes, heck yes, of course it is. I'm not going to sit here and say exercise doesn't matter. Yes, it does. But I just want to hold out hope for people for whom exercise is an issue, because they're often neglected or blamed for the problem. And this is actually not a useful response, and it doesn't have to be like that.
No, I heard something recently. Being a menopausal 52-year-old woman,
Mhm.
I've been trying to do a little bit of research about how to make me healthier, because the things that I did 15, 20 years ago are not going to be the things now.
It changed.
Right, everything changed. And there was something that I read. I wish I remembered the whole thing, but it was something like, if you are a menopausal woman, that exercising strenuously can
Mhm.
actually be counterintuitive, because it could increase your cortisol level and actually keep you from losing weight or getting in shape. Is that true?
That can be true. You can do testing. Again, test, don't guess. There is testing to look for that stress response and see what cortisol is doing. And if you find that your cortisol response is driven up at an inappropriate time, here's the deal with cortisol, right? It's a hormone released when we're stressed, just like adrenaline. It's released when we're stressed. Now, why do we have the release of special chemicals in our body? To keep us safe when we're stressed. Stress is back in the day where we had to run from a bear or a tiger or some other immediate threat. You needed to be superwoman in that moment, Superman, right? So to do that, your body would squeeze out these chemicals. In this case, cortisol is coming from your adrenal glands to allow you to meet the moment. So if you need to lift a car off of a loved one or a boulder back in the day, whatever it was, the threatening item, you had to respond. You had to do it in a short time. This means all the blood that's in the center of your body, your gut is going to leave. It's going to go to periphery to your muscles, because you need to be superhero. Okay. In modern world, when we are stimulated by stress like that, without any physical exertion to blow off and work off those chemicals, this is dangerous, because the level of cortisol stays high. It doesn't get worked off, so to speak. I just want to keep this simple. So all you physiologists, don't freak out. We got to keep this, everybody can understand.
She's talking to me. I'm an English teacher. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, so. I'm talking to my educator friend, okay?
Right.
So with that in mind, with this metaphor, since you're not working off those chemicals, they stay in the blood for longer. With it, because you are now superhuman, superwoman, superman, your body releases more blood sugar because you need fast, immediate energy.
Right.
Now, if this keeps happening, this means your blood sugar doesn't go down either, like it ought to. After you meet a crisis, an emergency, you have to respond to it. It's going to stay up too.
Huh.
You get on that blood sugar roller coaster. Then insulin from your pancreas, this is for people with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, because the pancreas is making insulin. That's what's normal there. Will probably overshoot because of the chronically high demand, and it'll make too much. Grab up all the available blood sugar crash.
Huh.
Feel crappy. Want to not feel crappy? Go eat a donut, something sugary.
To put the sugar back up.
Back up on the roller coaster. Whoop. 15 minutes later, boop, down. Right? You can ping pong like this the whole day. So you go from a breakfast might be high carbs, lots of sugar, coffee with added sugar, then to a soda, then to lunch. Lunch is probably full of processed foods. Then 2:00 in the afternoon, you do the face plant. Your head's down on the desk. You're exhausted. Yeah. You're done. You're just done. You're wiped, right? You're back in line at Starbucks or something at 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, putting sugar in something as a pick-me-up, desperate to get to dinner, for more processed food. This is a recipe for disaster.
For disaster.
It's too easy.
Yeah, you'll implode
too easy
yourself.
To get into this. And not understanding this is what's happening. Your body was designed to keep you safe, but this process has run amok. Today's lifestyles push us to feel stressed all the time without any actual response to a physical event that lets us work off the very chemicals meant to help us survive. Wow.
Wow. I'm exhausted just listening to that. Wow. Wow. That explains so much.
Right. So we don't get to pick it, but I'm just saying, once you know this, then you can rearrange your day and your night so that you can actually be healthy. So that's what the Yates Protocol is about, is helping people figure out on those 4 things where we're going to need to focus. And from there, make the choices and changes that they need to make. And it's usually 1 or 2 things. Most people don't have all 4 they need to work on. It's usually 1 or 2 that are really the money spots, the focus points that'll make so much difference. It'll just unravel the whole thing. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier.
Yeah, for me, it's unraveling the sugar addiction and adding more exercise. The other things are fine.
Okay.
And for the most part, I eat well. You know, I eat according to, for the most part, what the results of those blood tests were. But
That's so helpful. Good for
but
you.
I also have sat down with an entire family-sized bag of M&Ms and polished it off in 2 days by myself. You know, things like
Okay.
that are not good.
Okay. But at least you're aware of
Oh,
it, right?
totally
You can't fix
aware.
it if you're not aware,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then
Okay.
my daughter found me this vegan vegan sugar, no, not sugar free, vegan dairy free. That's what I was looking for. Ice cream. And I
Yum.
had it in my mind that it was health food.
Okay.
And I ate it like by the quart. And then I realized it still had sugar in it.
Yeah. I say by the court. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not so much.
So,
No, not
so
a quart at a sitting, but you know,
no, but
wasn't
that's
like
one of the
a,
things.
it needs to be portioned out.
I have to say portions, right? This is brilliant what you're talking about. Here's why. The portions are such an underappreciated piece. If you've traveled to other parts of the world, what's one of the things you've noticed when you've eaten a meal?
They eat less, but they
Yes,
eat whatever they want, but they eat less of it.
exactly. It's portions, and there's no economic incentive in their business model to supersize anything, including you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't want to be supersized.
Yeah, the portion control thing is, yeah. One simple tip I'd love to share with folks who are listening here is when you go out to eat, or if you get takeout wherever you are in the world listening to this, is to ask for a to-go container immediately if it wasn't already takeout, and immediately divide that food in half.
Yeah.
Put it into the, if you're actually sitting down inside the restaurant, if you're outside, people are in the pandemic or in different situations, but cut your portion in half immediately and put it away to be enjoyed later at home. If it's already a takeout portion, as soon as you get home, cut it in half.
Yeah, it's a good habit to get into.
And then wait 15 minutes after you finish eating whatever the initial portion was, and check in and see if you're actually hungry. It takes time for leptin, ghrelin, some other hormones to really do their magic around you feeling full and satisfied. It's called satiety, as well as hunger abatement, for the hunger to slow and for your body to realize, your brain specifically, is to get the signaling that says, we're good, we've had enough. Just wait 15 minutes.
For me, it's the pleasure of the taste and the texture of the food.
It's joyful.
That gets me.
It's
Even though I know I'm not hungry anymore and I'm full,
right.
I still want to enjoy the immediate gratification of that deliciousness on my tongue.
Yeah. It's real.
It's real. It's real. And when you're stressed about other things going on outside of your realm of control, it's all too easy to
2020
treat
was a
yourself.
kick in the teeth. My God, last year was just insane. So yeah
absolutely. Absolutely. So there was something else that I saw that you specifically talked to women who suffer from PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and had specific nutritional tips for them. Can you explain that a little bit? I have a couple of good friends, and my stepdaughter has issues with PCOS, and I'm wondering if we could target some of this to them.
So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And one of the features of PCOS that's common for the women who have this is that there's usually an element of insulin resistance, i.e. their body still makes insulin. So the pancreas is putting out insulin in response. The problem is effectiveness of the insulin.
Wait, we're losing.
Grab that stress, blood sugar, insulin, right? So the insulin's not as effective.
Can we do that explanation again? We had a weird Wi-Fi thing and you froze. The polycystic ovarian thing.
Oh, okay. Sure. So for polycystic ovarian syndrome, it is a problem that can affect women, obviously, usually of reproductive years. And in that, one of the features of PCOS is typically what's called insulin resistance. And with insulin resistance, what can happen is that the body's ability to effectively and efficiently process glucose or blood sugar is compromised. So after a while, they'll put out more and more insulin in response to blood sugar with less and less benefit. What's supposed to happen is this: insulin will come in response to that rising blood sugar and meet it, not overshoot it, but meet it, and make the glucose come in via the receptors on the cell to the cell inside and provide energy for the cell. That's what glucose is supposed to do. So blood sugar has to come inside your cells in order to be useful to you. Insulin is what makes all that happen. Right. When there's insulin resistance, then the availability of that glucose to come inside the cell is compromised. It's lowered. And as a result, the extra blood sugar then because the insulin response is sluggish, so to speak, usually creates increased body weight, increased fat. And so a
Okay.
person can very easily start to gain weight, even though they may not be overeating. It's really unfortunate, but when these things are not sensitized to each other, you can get to some profound health problems for sure.
Huh. So you can modulate your symptoms with PCOS by changing the way you eat.
With nutrition, yes, exercise, sometimes supplements, stress management will be key.
Wow.
Will be key because stress hijacks blood sugar. When you're stressed long enough, believe me, it'll just take off like a rocket. And this is one way that can show up. And then, of course, that core foundation of sleep.
Wow. It's amazing. I love the way you explain things in such a clear, succinct way. No wonder you used clear as one of the words that you describe yourself as.
Well,
Because
thank you.
I've so many disparate things have just been put together like Legos for me.
Oh, well, great. Thank you. I've worked really hard to be a good communicator because I find that if people are going to make good decisions, they have to have good information and they have to be able to
Yeah.
understand it. Otherwise, they don't know what to do and then they wind up not doing anything that's useful.
Right, because they're just
That's what I
overwhelmed, so
think.
they give up.
Yeah, yeah.
So you offer on your website consultants packages, or can you explain what you offer on your new website?
Sure, sure. So on the website, what's offered is the opportunity to work with my team where we can go through these things with you for nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep to help you get dialed in for blood sugar issues or for heart health kinds of problems because they are just so sensitive to lifestyle measures. And we've been able to help lots and lots and lots of people. We're looking to help more because these problems are growing and the
Mm-hmm.
current moment is just making things even more extreme for people. And, I would really love to see people get a handle on their blood sugar because it is so central. That's one of the reasons why uncontrolled diabetes can be so devastating. And people can lose their kidneys and kidney function, wind up on dialysis. They have compromised immune function because of all the problems with blood flow and the inflammation we talked about before. They can wind up with heart disease. We talked about that inflammatory process with cholesterol.
Right.
And in this case, it's interaction with blood sugar definitely can literally like plug up your blood vessels that way. They can lose their vision and go blind. They can have such peripheral circulation problems with hands, toes, feet, fingers, nose, clitoris, the penis, etc. People wind up with amputations and gangrenes, usually of the lower limbs. It's the typically toes, feet, lower legs that are the most compromised just because of the effects of gravity, and on and on. There's just a host of problems that can show up. And if you can get a hold of that blood sugar and improve it over time and help them to heal, what a difference. Quality
Yeah.
of life, a lot more energy, clearer thinking. Diabetics are famously tired. It's a weird kind of fatigue because it gets so deeply ingrained. It's hard for people to get the momentum to
Mm-hmm.
just literally get up, to just have movement throughout their day. And in that way, it can be cruel, quite frankly. And this can make the difference for entire families sometimes.
What caused the choice in specialty for you? I'm listening to you talk, and you talk
Mm-hmm.
so passionately about this that, and it sort of reminds me of my own sister's conversation that she had trying to pick her specialty in medical school. How did
Okay.
you direct yourself to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's see. I got interested in heart disease for two reasons. One, it's quite interesting. I was at a naturopathic medical convention. I think it was like 1998 or something. And this lady, the woman who was there was from a publishing company, and she literally stalked me for 2 days at the
Wow.
conference. And I was like, this is creepy. What is up? So I finally turned around and looked at her. I was like, okay, what is going on? Like, why do you follow me everywhere I go? It was just strange. So she had asked me if I would be interested in writing a book. And so this was what they had proposed. And then I did my own research. I looked at the information from the National Institutes of Health, et cetera. And at the time, the internet had nowhere near the access to this kind of data, but
Mm-hmm.
I could look at like PubMed and NIH and CDC websites and see and go look for myself and go, oh my goodness, this really is a problem, right? So I could see that African American women were having much more of a problem at that time with heart disease. Now everybody's caught up. We're all in a mess, unfortunately. And so I was like, sure, I'll write this book. I'm honored that you would ask me to do this. So that's one reason. Another was that my grandmother had died of a stroke, and I had been there at the house that day when the stroke happened, and she died 2 weeks later in the intensive care unit, unfortunately. And I was 11, and it was just thank you. It was a pivotal moment in my life for sure to just see what we would call now a stroke in evolution and all of the damage that was done. And, our family had lost our matriarch, and that was a big deal, a huge moment.
It's pivotal. Remember that moment when my own grandmother died. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You remember those things. And
yeah.
I'm sorry. It matters a lot if you're there at the moment of that kind of transition in a family, for sure. Then for diabetes, as I got reconnected with my father's side of my family, I discovered that there's a big issue with blood sugar for that side of the family. And so I was like, what really got me going in this work was the number of new patients coming in all the time who had 4 or 5 serious chronic illnesses. I've typically seen people with serious health problems who also had diabetes. And the more I realized how common this is becoming, I mean, right now, Marci, the numbers are staggering. There's over 137 million people in this country who have diabetes of some kind. Wow. Type 1 diabetes is 5% of that number.
Type 1 is when you have to have insulin injections, correct?
Type 1 is when your pancreas no longer makes any insulin whatsoever. And yes, you will need to take insulin or use an insulin pump or something. Those are the people for whom the pancreas burn out and no longer makes the insulin at all. It's a different situation. Right. For pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, that's the 95% of the diabetes pie. And in that, most of them right now are type 2 diabetes because so many people with pre-diabetes have yet to be diagnosed.
Sure.
They aren't even aware that they've got a problem. There's so many ways that there are on-ramps to becoming a person who has type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. So that's why I talk about stress the way I do, because stress is a classic way to become a type 2 diabetic. It is not eating tons of ice cream and cheesecake. That's why I say people don't necessarily party their way to these problems. And I want people to stop blaming folks. It's not useful, et cetera. Poor sleep is another way people become diabetic. Another option with this can be that someone has had severe stress that they didn't heal from. And another option is that their nutrition is not good, along with a lack of exercise. Any 2 of those 4 together, and heaven forbid all 3 or 4 together, whoop, it's a recipe for a problem.
Wow. And there's so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shockingly growing number. And I'd love to see that trend reverse. Like if we can put a pin in it and just say, we're going to commit to making this better over the course of the next 15 years, we could absolutely do this. Mm-hmm. But we will have to be about healthcare and not disease management. Right. Those are different things. They're different things.
Yeah. Wow. This has been such an eye-opening, informational conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. This is my pleasure. Thank you for asking me. I love having a chance to have these conversations and just, reach people, because I just think the more we can understand things in regular words, the better off we all are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if anybody wants to track down Dr. Beverly, you can do so at her website, Dr. Beverly Yates, YATES.com. That will be listed in the show notes underneath where this episode is found. Thank you so much, Dr. Beverly, for coming. I appreciate your time. This has been fabulous. This is my pleasure, Marci. I'm honored. Thank you for asking me. I hope that people are helped, that they got at least one thing clearer today. That would be great. I got a dozen things clearer today. So this is great.
You're so kind.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.